All right, y'all, we're continuing our dive into the NBA draft of 2022, looking at the number 7 pick with the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, the idea here is trying to build around star point guard Damian Lillard, so far as we know, from Portland's front office, which, it's weird. I'm not going to lie to you. It doesn't really stay consistent with some of the moves they've made. The Gary Trent, Norman Powell swap makes sense in that context. The Powell Covington trade to the Clippers doesn't. Because when you look at this roster now, you're like, all right, what pieces do we have currently that makes sense to make a playoff run with Damian Lillard? And it's a short list of guys that make sense in that context. Josh Hart, for example, that makes sense. Getting him over in the CJ McCollum trade, fair enough. Really solid wing defender, rebounds really well for his position, can shoot the ball some. Fine. Okay. Not sure. Really haven't heard much about what their plan is with Yusuf Nurkic. Unrestricted free agent. How much is he worth? Really, you look at most teams that are paying his level big men. It's not pretty. I don't think you're going to want to overpay for a guy like that. I mean, he's a solid player, can score the ball, can rebound, but you can get that kind of production for a pretty decent price. So depending on what, he's looking for, not sure whether he can be, part of this long-term plan or not. After that, whether Anthony Simons, obviously a great offensive talent, whether he is someone that can play in a playoff series remains to be seen. You kind of run into the same thing with him and Dame as a backcourt is kind of the same thing as Dame and CJ in the backcourt in terms of, relatively undersized guards that aren't necessarily defensive-minded. So Anthony's a bit of a question mark. He's also a restricted free agent. What is he worth is another big question. So now, after that, is Justice Winslow someone you want long-term? Is Trendon Watford and Greg Brown and some of these younger guys, where do they fit into this? You assume like Nas Little maybe is a rotation player you feel okay about. And, obviously Eric Bledsoe is most likely salary filler in any trades they make. But as we summarize here, it's really Dame, Josh Hart, maybe Nurkic, maybe Simons. And that's Portland. So, if it's me, I know, Dame has been incredibly loyal to the franchise, has repeatedly said, not going to request a trade. And maybe, he likes the idea of being number one, without a doubt. Dame time, last shot, all of that. And that's totally fine. But, on paper, you take out all the history, all the kind of backstory here. And it makes a lot more sense to just trade Dame and try and develop some of your younger guys than it does to just try and build around Dame with the little assets you have and try and make the playoffs. I don't know what this looks like. Dame's coming off injury. He's in his 30s now. What are the realistic chances this team makes a deep playoff run, even with some of the potential pieces they're looking at? So you're looking at, shopping the 7th pick. It's Jeremy Grant, it's Lou Dort, OG Anunoby, OG in Toronto, that guy. Maybe I think I would be most excited about OG. I don't know really how willing Toronto is and what their asking price I feel like would be pretty high for him. Lou Dort's someone you're going to have to pay pretty quickly after acquiring him. Obviously, having another wing defender to try and offset Dame on that side of the ball makes a lot of sense. So they're obviously going after the right guys and the kind of right prototype to pair with him. But, does that really move the needle in terms of, making the playoffs, especially in a West where, all the contenders are going to be back. You figure, Golden State, Memphis, Denver is going to be better, Dallas, Minnesota is now in that conversation, New Orleans is now in that conversation, Clippers now if Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, which obviously is a big if, and then of course Phoenix, despite the 8-in thing, probably will be competing in the playoffs. Like, it's just jam-packed. I mean, both conferences are going to be very competitive next year. And you imagine Portland might be in the mix, but like to win a playoff series with, the roster and assets they have now, it just doesn't seem likely. But if we're going to, kind of assume that they're in this win now mode, what does the 7th pick look like? And it probably looks like trading out of it, maybe entirely, then even trading back some, unless you can get a pretty good asset and maybe a late first from someone. Don't think that's likely. So, yeah, you're looking at Jeremy Grant. Again, I mentioned talking about Detroit, though. Jeremy Grant is on an expiring contract. You're going to have to pay him. Is he someone you want to pay long term? Is he like Dame's running mate? Like, probably not, but I don't know. There's that. But if you're going to stick with this pick, I mean, ideally, like I said, I would have traded Dame Lillard. Maybe you wait till the deadline to see, prove that he's healthy. Which, yeah, it would be a huge backstab. Like, I recognize that. And, maybe if I actually was in the front office and had a relationship with Damian Lillard, I would never trade him because of what he's, done for the city, done for the franchise. Especially in an era where, star players are so quick to jump ship. Like, all the respect in the world to Dame Lillard. I'm just, from a basketball standpoint, I think it just makes more sense to trade him and take someone at 7, whether it's, Dyson Daniels is someone that's, kind of climbed a lot of draft boards, kind of that Josh Giddey, tall point guard, great vision, still working on outside shooting, but defensively very gifted. I think it makes a lot of sense for Portland. And even if they keep the pick, he could be someone that could play alongside Dame that makes a lot of sense. Benedict Mathurin, that kind of wing defender that they're looking for in the trade market. They could get in the draft someone that, generally speaking, could contribute right away. Maybe not to the level of some of those trade targets, but similar, try to, excel in that role. Maybe AJ Griffin as well as kind of a 3-and-D guy. If you're comfortable with his injury history, someone that could be there as well at 7. And depending on how this Nurkic thing goes, I mean, a way cheaper option would be to draft a guy like Jalen Duran at 7, fill kind of that void. You have your starting center. He's athletic. He's a shot blocker, rim protector type guy. Do pick and roll with Dame maybe. And you have that set, and he's on a rookie deal. He's cheap. He can fill that role, pretty much right away as far as we know. He's also pretty young, one of the youngest guys in the draft. So long-term, maybe in a world without Damian Lillard, he's still around developing and getting better, at your center position. So there's that option as well. Again, whether on draft night Portland is actually selecting this pick seems unlikely. But those would be the routes. Those would be the kind of guys I would be looking for at this pick. Now, you may disagree. Feel free to let me know who you would take if you're in that front office with the 7th pick. Love to hear it. But for now, take it easy. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next time.